What we do here is go back.
How's it going, everyone, and welcome to episode 41 of the Lost Media Podcast. Today we're talking about Snuffy's Parents Get a Divorce, the only Sesame Street episode to have been filmed, finished, but never aired. It is now the only lost Sesame Street episode because the Wicked Witch episode was found recently. And yes, this is the one that was screened to test audiences, young kids, who watched it and went, are my parents just going to get a divorce now? This was a bit of a disaster for the Sesame Street creators, at least. No one else knows if it was a disaster or not, but they can guess because there is some leaked audio of this episode. I don't know if it was leaked. I think it was released on purpose from the Sesame Street creators, and bits and pieces of this episode have been released. It's listed as partially found on the Lost Media Wiki. I've said my disagreement with the whole found, partially found, and lost system they have on that website. I think there should be another tier that's like parts have been found, or I don't know what you'd call it, but partially found is a bit misleading. It may lead people to believe that there's chunks of this episode that have been released. I just made a weird noise again. No, there's just a little bit of audio and some screenshots and maybe a clip or two from this episode. It's mostly lost, and I guess it's a piece of Sesame Street history that everyone wants to see. It apparently was aired in a film festival in 2019 in New York City, but no one got a bootleg copy of it, and no one was able to, I guess, record what was aired in that film festival, or if they were trying to, they would be told to not record, or they'd have their phones confiscated or their camera confiscated. Yeah, there's a lot of mystery still surrounding this. I first heard about this in Blame It on George's Top 40 Lost or Banned Kid Shows video from like 2015. This was the number one entry in that video. This was his first big video he ever made. And I think it's the oldest video on his channel to date. It is one of those elusive pieces of lost media. I'd put it right at the top of pieces of lost media that is just like, this actually happened and we want to see it. We need to see this. Sesame Street has since tried to tackle the topic of divorce once more in 2012, and they did an okay job to varying success. They wanted to try again with making an episode about this, but this was the one time Sesame Street didn't, I guess, or hit the nail so poorly that they couldn't even release the episode. Because of that test screening going so poorly for them. And it's an interesting one. I didn't grow up watching much Sesame Street. I did grow up watching it a bit on TV, but I do not remember the character Snuffy or his parents. Yeah, that wasn't my time. Definitely not my time. This is it's a very tough thing for a television show to try and do, is cover all bases perfectly. A television show like Sesame Street has done a really good job covering a lot of topics, like death when Mr. Hooper died. That was a pretty landmark episode of the show. And I guess when they got such positive feedback from how they were able to do that topic and how they were able to make an episode discussing that to the audience in such a good way, they kind of thought, well, we've done such a good job on that. Let's try and tackle divorce now. Let's tackle all sensitive topics of life that kids struggle with and kids get confused by. And this episode allegedly was so I guess I wouldn't say poorly made, because it's a Sesame Street episode, it can't be that bad, but it made kids who saw it in test screenings think that their parents obviously wouldn't love them anymore and were going to get a divorce even though they were happily married. And it made them think, oh, if my parents get a divorce, is this like it made them think all the things that they were trying to avoid. They were trying to make this episode to make all the kids believe that everything was going to be okay. And it's not, it's just a part of life that's sad that happens. And there are ways through this, but the test screening went about as badly as a test screening could go. Every reaction was the the opposite reaction. The reaction you'd get from an episode that was made to make kids think that divorce was just this horrible thing. So that's why this episode has never been released. As I said, there's interviews about it from former Sesame Street creators or people that worked on it. There's bits of it featured in documentaries on Sesame Street. Sesame Street, A Life on the Street, I think, was one of the documentaries that this was featured in. Previously, it was just screenshots up until 2019, I think. I think that's when the audio was released. And then in 2022, that's right, last year, there was more of this, like small clips that were released in another documentary. But we haven't got the full episode yet. This was mostly completely lost, though, up until just a few years ago. There was just those screenshots. And the screenshots aren't really relevant because this is a reoccurring character. And those screenshots of, like, the kid looking sad next to the parents, they're not... How do you know they're from the actual episode? That just might be some screenshot of recording on another day with these characters for another episode. So this was mostly just shrouded in mystery, but people knew it existed. That's the difference between this Sesame Street episode and the Wicked Witch one. I think the Wicked Witch one, people thought this doesn't exist. This isn't real. And then it was found. But this one has always been confirmed to exist. As I said earlier, I'm going to cover the Wicked Witch one in a future episode. It is so tough covering lost media that is still so shrouded in mystery. That is a very difficult aspect of looking at pieces of lost media. Where do you go with this? Like, it's there. The episode still exists. It does exist. You couldn't really call this lost media, actually, because it is in the archives. It is completed, ready to go in full, but just sitting in the archives. And obviously the internet hasn't got a hold of it. Someone working in the archives hasn't leaked it to the internet. There's been no, release of this of any kind, except for that film festival in 2019. I'd love you guys to correct me in the comments below if that film festival did actually show the episode in full, and if people were trying to leak it from that film festival. I'm not really sure. But yeah, that's all there really is to it. And it's just it makes me wonder how badly they got it. I think everyone wants to see it because they think, well, if the test audiences reacted that poorly to it, what the heck is in this? And you listen to the leaked audio and it's like, oh yeah. That's kind of, I'm gonna put that in the description. But yeah, it's like, well, I understand why kids watched this and just got straight up confused. And apparently they were just like straight up crying after watching this. I don't know if that's true, but kids left believing that their parents didn't love them if they got a divorce, which, as I said, as I've already mentioned, is not the reaction you want to a test screening. It's a good thing they test screen this, because if there's just like a handful of kids that are in a test screening that believe that, there's a good chance that the episode goes to air, then it's not going to do too well. Fascinating, though, that the only Sesame Street episode ever made that has never been released, there's just one, and it's this. It's something that you wouldn't really expect to be unreleased. It's an interesting topic. I would expect it to be something that they really screwed up a lot more, not just Snuffy's parents getting a divorce, but yeah. Mythical piece of lost media, one of the top tier ones. But sadly, even though it's one of the top tier ones, that's all we know about it. There is not much information. You guys can comment in the comments if I've missed something. If I've missed a few details about this, please fill me in, because I am so unfamiliar with any more details than I've already mentioned. It is just this shrouded in mystery piece of lost media, and it might always be. Who knows? I've had clips of it playing behind me of what I could find from Snuffy's parents get a divorce, and also videos covering the topic, which feature interviews and also interviews with the guy that talks about the production of this and how it didn't go too well. I just find it fascinating how they've done such a good job of stopping this from being leaked. Sesame Street's so popular. This is one of the most popular pieces of lost media ever, and it still has not been released. It's amazing. So yeah, but there you have it, guys. That's all there is to it. My brother's about to interrupt the recording, but we're right at the end of this episode, so that's all good. Come on in. Come on in.
We've got Nab on the line. We need your phone.
We've got the bank on the line. Don't steal my bank pin, guys. See you next time. I'm coming back soon. Goodbye.